So yesterday I was reading the New York Times and I was going through one of those articles where they list out all the symptoms, tell you whether or not you have an addiction. And as I went through the list and mentally in my head checked yes, I realized I had to come to terms with it. I'm addicted, and my addiction could be leading to the end of the world as we know it. I found out that a small group of Americans, just 12% of us, are responsible for 66% all the world's air pollution.
How dare you!
But I also found out there's a silver lining and there's something we can do about it. So if you're like me and you're a travel addict, but you want to avoid destroying the earth, then smash that like button. Let's get started. Hey guys, my name is Andrew Wise and I'm with Life Tailored, and we teach you how to travel the world for free using points and miles. But today it's a very somber note that I talk to you because we're talking about our travel addiction. We're addicted to credit card points, we're addicted to flying around the world, and we could be destroying the world. So the structure of this video, I'm going to break it down into 4 different segments. Number 1, what's really causing climate change and what is it? Number 2, how bad is air travel really for climate change? Number 3, what are some of the biggest things we can personally do to fix climate change? And 4, are there ways for us to actually offset our carbon pollution for just $12 for a round-trip flight across the US? So before we get started, let me know down in the comments, do you think climate change is real? Yes or no? And now we're going to get started talking about climate change as a whole. And I know there's been some fake news out there. It seems like the rest of the world seems to believe climate change exists. But for some reason in the US, we have a hesitancy to accept some facts from scientists. But let me just give you a quick scenario. Say you're on the fence, or say you're not quite sure if climate change is real. Say I was going to make you a bet to prove that you're right and I'm wrong. So what we're going to do is we're both going to sit in our garage, turn on our cars, and wait 1 hour. After an hour, we're both going to meet up and give our results. And if you're sitting in your car, so on your side, you're going to sit in your car, say you have a nice Chevy Suburban, 3 rows of seats, V12, V8 engine, Great American Muscle or whatever, Great American Horsepower, and they sit in that car for an hour, and most likely you're probably not going to survive that 1 hour. Now on the other hand, I'm going to be sitting in my car, but my car is going to be a Tesla. And after an hour, I'm going to be watching the giant display there, doing some GPS, surfing the web, and after that hour, I'm going to be perfectly fine. So obviously this is a pretty extreme scenario. Nobody's actually going to sit in their garage to get killed by methane gas or anything like that. But take that analogy of the garage to the entire world. Instead of one car and being trapped in there with all these pollutants, imagine 1 billion cars on the road, 1 billion cars polluting the earth. The more pollution out there, the hotter it gets, the more dirty and dangerous the air becomes. And just in general, think about that small analogy. Polluting your garage is basically like polluting the globe. When it comes to climate change, the less pollution we can do, the better. If we can switch all of our power right now to solar or wind or turbine or dams, that's going to cut out pollution. Obviously, that's not a complete solution. There isn't enough solar power out there to power enough homes, all that sort of stuff. But just from a big picture perspective, I think everybody can agree that less pollution from cars, trains, airplanes, etc. is a good thing. But I think where a lot of people disagree is they want to know, how big is this problem really? So I pulled up some stats from 2017, and it breaks down how much greenhouse gas is actually being caused by different sectors in the US economy. And the 2 biggest ones are transportation and electricity. Something interesting to note is industry only accounts for 22%. So when you think about these smokestacks coming out of these factories, it's actually only 22%. Transportation itself, which falls under air travel, car travel, bus travel, train travel, anything like that, is larger than the amount of pollution coming from factories at which we typically look at and say, hey, it's your guys' fault there's all this pollution out there. The truth is, transportation and electricity are 2 big components created by consumers, by people like you and people like me. It's not actually the big businesses causing this. It's kind of the analogy with Narcos. If you've ever seen the Netflix show, it's about the Colombian drug trade, the Mexican drug trade, and basically these guys are producing illegal drugs and they're selling it to the US. Right now we banned all sorts of drugs and it creates this black market and it creates all this illegal crime because the US wants illegal drugs so badly. And it's basically the same sort of analogy with oil companies and gas companies. They're mining all of this oil and gas and all this sort of stuff because there's this demand for electricity, like these lights here, like this TV camera, like air travel. Consumers are creating all of the demand, and that's really why they're producing all of this gas. So the biggest fault really lies on you and me, but specifically, how big of a contributor is air travel? So I pulled up this really cool chart I want to show you guys. So if you take a look at the chart, it shows how much carbon we're contributing to the world based on what type of person you are. So if you're a student, you're doing 6 tons. If you're the average American, you're doing 16. If you're a daily commuter, it's 21. If you're a frequent flyer like us, it's 50. And if you're a CEO, it's 85. So the majority of us are not CEOs, but if you're watching this trip and have taken more than 6 round-trip flights in the past year, you're contributing 10 times as much as the average student was, and about 3 times as much as the average person in their car. So our air travel is a huge contributor to the amount of pollution we put into the air. So it's a pretty major problem, and it's something that has really got me thinking about whether or not I want to keep traveling as much as I do, and talking about referring you guys to flight hacks and all that sort of stuff. This whole sort of shame thing is something the Swedes have called flygskam, which basically means flying shame. And I've been thinking about this flying shame ever since I read that article. But, let's not all focus on the negatives, let's talk about the positives. And let's kind of talk about what are some of the things that we can do in our everyday lives that are pretty easy to accomplish that can make a difference. So the first one is when you're brushing your teeth, turn off the water. You don't have to have the water run. You don't have to warm it up so the toothbrush has hot water on it. Same thing goes when you're brushing your hair, washing your face. Turn the water on, wet your hands, turn it off again. When you leave a room, turn off a light. If you have my best friend Alexa, don't want to say her name because it might trigger something, you can have her turn off the lights remotely if you forget once you leave the house. Or if you're upstairs, you can tell her to turn off downstairs. If you have light bulbs that burn out, buy an LED. It's a little bit more expensive, but it uses much less power. Another thing that we need to adapt to is we are like suckers for our air conditioning. If you go to Europe, the first thing you notice when you land in the airports is it's hot because they don't run the air pretty much for anything. So in your house, just try changing the temperature by 2 degrees warmer than it would normally be. And in the winter, wear some extra sweaters, bundle up, layer up so you don't have a constant heat bill going on. These are kind of easy things that we can do in our everyday lives that will reduce our usage and reduce the amount of electricity and power we use. I did some research as well, trying to figure out what are the most impactful things we can do that are really hard things to change, but will make a big difference. So it's 3 things. One is to switch from a meat-based diet to a plant-based diet. I was listening to Arnold Schwarzenegger on Howard last week, and he was saying that he used to eat 250 grams of protein every day. That broke down to about 10 to 15 eggs a day, and that was terrible for his body and terrible for the environment. So if the governor can switch from a meat-based to a plant-based diet, I think anybody else can do it. There's plenty of plant-based alternatives that can get you plenty of protein, and you can be a vegetarian bodybuilder, vegan bodybuilder. The second is how much we drive. So if you can drive less and walk more, take the train, take public transportation, that's going to have a big impact on your personal impact to the amount of carbon you offset, to the amount of emissions you create. If that's hard for you because you have to drive every day, then consider investing in a hybrid car or an electric vehicle. That's going to reduce your total emissions. Obviously, it's going to bring in more power from the power plants, but it's going to be a big change that you can make that every day will start to add up. The third biggest thing is air travel. So like we said, us frequent flyers are burning 10 times the amount of pollution as a student would. But if you're like me and you just don't think you can quit air travel,
I wish I knew how to quit you.
I do have a solution for you. And they are called carbon offset credits. Basically what offset credits are, it's a way to crowdfund a global fight against climate change. What does that mean exactly? Let me tell you about one company. It's called cooleffect.org. Basically what they are is it's a non-profit dedicated to finding the best carbon projects all around the world and making it easy for you to invest in them. It's a non-profit. 90% of your donation goes directly to the projects. The other 10% goes to pay for overhead, websites, credit card processing, all that sort of stuff. Contributions are also tax deductible, which is pretty awesome. But let's actually talk about how the whole project works. Okay, so first let's start with a quick scenario. So we're flying out for our buddy Joe's wedding this coming November, and it's going to be a round-trip flight from JFK to SFO. So that flight is 4 to 6 hours, and I'm going to offset 0.78 tons of pollution. My offset cost is $6. So that means a round-trip flight is just $12 to offset the amount of pollution I'm going to create. So even though we're creating 10 times as much pollution, if we're buying these carbon offset credits, we can nullify our effect on climate change and actually make a positive impact. So let's actually figure out how these projects work, where does this $12 go, and how Cool Effect helps us crowdfund climate change. Crowdfund an end to climate change. Okay, so let's check out some of these projects. So basically what they do is my $12 will go into different anti-warming projects. So say for example, I want to check out the Alto Mayo Protected Forest. Okay, so basically there's a forest in Peru. There's 450,000 acres of it. And what we're going to do is our money is going to go to protecting this forest. So that means either buying more of the forest and just leaving it for nature to kind of take a hold, and also employing guards and protection so that people don't come and burn a bunch of the forest or use it for timber mining or any sorts of weird sorts of stuff that could go on. Our money is directly going to support this forest. This forest itself is about twice the size of New York City. And what they're doing specifically with this forest is they're turning former tree loggers in Peru, where that was the only way to really make money, and turning them into organic coffee farmers, and finding other ways for the domestic people of the area to actually make money so they're not going to contribute to tearing down the forest just to be able to survive. So we're essentially investing into keeping this forest alive by taking our flights all around the world. So if you want to get involved with Cool Effect, I'm putting a link down below. And basically all you have to do is whenever you feel that flying shame, when you book your next flight, go to Cool Effect and drop off $12 or whatever your next flight's going to be. So guys, let me know, what do you think about this whole carbon offset thing? Has it got you maybe changing your mind about flying so much? Are you not interested in these offset credits? Do you think you're just going to completely reduce the amount of air travel you do? Let me know down in the comments. I know this is a different type of video, but I'd love to get your guys' feedback. And if you've made it this far, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell. I've got another video coming up soon that's a bit on a more lighthearted note, talking about some more credit card hacks and maybe how to not fly the world for free but get the most cash back, so you can just reinvest that cash back into more offset credits. But I'd love to see you guys on Instagram and follow where Way and I are right now. We're on Instagram at LifeTaylor. Okay guys, new video coming out this Monday. See you there.